In Elden Ring, we often find the influences of events and legends of the past of our own real world. They are able to rewrite a tale that was already spun for an audience far wider than the original. On this day, I want to take a look at a character much beloved by the community. A warrior of great renown and whose history paints a vivid tapestry of experience. Sir Ansbach, the pure-blood knight. I want to show you a glimpse at the man behind the mask, at the hidden monster lurking beneath the surface. Tuck in, grab a snack, and let's take a dive.
Righteous Tarnished, what brings you here?
Estimates suggest that between the 14th and the 17th century, up to 100,000 people were executed across Europe on the charge of being werewolves. France and Germany in particular. The werewolf could be sometimes the victim of a curse, but more often than not, he was seen as a worshipper of Satan. Since turning into a wolf was considered the result of magical arts, lycanthropy trials fell into the wider phenomenon of witch hunt. Among historical accounts of werewolves, there is one in particular that is absolutely noteworthy. During the year 1685, in the Principality of Ansbach, a wolf began attacking livestock. What was an otherwise normal threat suddenly became more serious when the animal killed several children within a few months. The idea spread that this was no normal wolf, but rather a werewolf, on whose identity there was little doubt. The detested Miquella, the burgomaster of Ansbach, a figure halfway between a mayor and a ruler, had recently died after subjecting the town to his tyranny for many years. It was rumored that this much-hated public figure had actually managed to escape death by transferring his spirit into the body of a wolf. Some swore they saw him attend his own funeral. A contemporary flyer shows Michael Licht, who, in the form of a wolf wrapped in white linen shroud, returns to his old apartment, scaring the new tenants. Thus, hunting the fierce wolf became an imperative not only in order to protect children from further carnage, but to free the city from the spirit of the burgomaster still haunting those places, and to avenge years of harassment.
Good. All signed and sealed. Now, let's begin the transfusion. Oh, don't you worry. Whatever happens, you may think it all a mere bad dream.
found yourself a hunter.
The hunters prepared a wolfsgrube. This wolf pit consisted of a hole with stone walls, 3 or 4 meters deep, covered with branches and straw, and it was used to trap wild animals. Raw meat was placed at the bottom of the well, and oft as not, it was alive. A sheep, a pig, possibly even a goose. The wolf, smelling the prey, would wander around the scrubs until it fell into the trapping pit. In this case, the bait was a rooster. The wolf fell into the hole and was killed by hunters. The carcass of the animal was paraded through the streets to show the danger was over. The men had prevailed over the beast. But since this was no ordinary wolf, a more grotesque spectacle was staged. After skinning the animal, the men severed its muzzle and placed on its head a cardboard mask of licked features. They dressed it with a wig and a cloak, and hung the wolf by a gibbet erected on a nearby hill so that it was clearly visible. A poem from the time reads, "I, wolf, was a grim beast and devourer of many children, which I far preferred to fat sheep and steers. A rooster killed me, a well was my death. I now hang from the gallows for the ridicule of all people. As a spirit and as a wolf, I bothered men. How appropriate now that people say, 'Ah, you damned spirit who entered the wolf. You now swing from the gallows disguised as a man. This is your fair compensation, the gift you have earned. This you deserve. A gibbet is your grave. Take this reward, because you have devoured the sons of men, like a fierce and ferocious beast. A real child eater.' The punishment reserved for this demonic beast is subtler than it might seem, because it actually serves a double symbolic purpose. On one hand, depriving the wolf of his fur and replacing it with human clothes meant showing Satan himself that his tricks did not work. The people of Ansbach were able to recognize the man concealed under the fur. This was therefore a warning addressed to the devil himself. "This is how your evil servants end up around here." And it had a clear apotropaic effect. On the other hand, there was an undeniable political aspect. This was a by proxy execution of the former ruler. The commoner, who had failed to overthrow their oppressor while he was alive, did so post-mortem. One may wonder, was this a warning to the new burgomaster, so that he might keep in line? Or was the new ruler himself behind this staging? Such a striking public show could be a good way for him to earn his subjects' trust, a way of distancing himself from the tyranny of his predecessor. In any case, the political message was clear, even for those who did not believe in werewolves. This act was meant to mark the end of a dark era. As this episode demonstrates, we would be wrong to see lycanthropy trials as simple and blind mass hysteria fueled by superstition. Even though they were a product of fear in times of great epidemics, as well as political and social instability, Werewolf trials sometimes involved stratified levels of meaning which were far from being unintentional. While courts condemned hundreds of people to be burned at the stake, intellectuals debated how it was possible for a man to turn into a wolf. And they were surprisingly quite aware that the problem lied in telling the legend from the truth. For instance, one of the most brilliant treatises on the subject, The Discourse on Lycanthropy, 1599, by Jean Beauvoir de Chavoncourt, traces the origins of the werewolf in Greek mythology, spending several pages to discern between which ancient stories had to be considered simple allegories and which ones could hide a kernel of truth. But what exactly was this truth? What was going on during a lycanthropy episode? Can we, in all rationality, wonders Beauvoir, believe that a man has the magical power of changing his physical form? And then there was a more delicate question of theological nature. How could Satan transform what God had created, replacing the Almighty in a sort of second creation? Crediting the devil with such high power was inadmissible, since only God could turn water into wine, Lot's wife into salt, or Moses' rod into a snake. In his treatise, Beauvoir devises an extremely ingenious solution, a true marvel of balance to get himself out of the impasse. Since endorsing the possibility of an actual man-to-wolf transformation would lead him dangerously close to blasphemous, or at least heretical positions, he opts for a double demonic illusion. The first illusion affects the werewolves themselves. Satan, thanks to his pure and simple subtlety, by penetrating into their bodies and occupying their internal organs, becomes their true owner and persuades them of what he wants. Troubling their imagination, he makes them believe they are brutal beasts, and infuses them with the same desires and attractions those animals have, up to the point that they begin having frequent carnal unions with those of their kind. Thus, the werewolf is nothing but a man who's lost his way and got tricked by the devil. His body is not really covered in fur, his nails do not turn into claws, nor his teeth into fangs. Everything just happens in his mind.
Beasts all over the shop. You'll be one of them, sooner or later.
An extraordinary idea, if you remember that something close to psychiatry will only appear 2 centuries later. Then, by administering ointments, eye drops, creams, and powders to these slaves, the devil is able to create hallucinations even in those who have the misfortune of meeting the werewolf. Such is the smell and air so affected by this filth that they not only affect his patient, but they are so powerful as to act on the external sense of the audience, taking possession of their eyes. Disturbed by this poison, they are persuaded that these transformations are real.
What's that smell? The sweet blood. Oh, it sings to me. It's enough to make a man sick.
Therefore, on a more superficial level, The werewolf represents the danger of abandoning oneself to bestial instincts, of losing one's own humanity. It is a moral figure meant to illustrate what happens when man turns away from the divine light, and it signifies a regression to barbarism, the loss of the Logos. A legend of a serial killing child murderer who had a past as a noble, who was chased out of his community, hunted with the intent to kill, who had become infatuated with the devil himself. I would be remiss to ignore the clear inspirations this story had in crafting the character that shares the name with the town who had been plagued by this monster. Sir Ansbach, the pureblood knight. This masked individual who seeks the expeditious Empyrean Miquella the Kind and asks our player character to inform him of any clues to the whereabouts of the young lord.
You must be the Tarnished. I am Ansbach, formerly in service to Lord Moog, but now, like you, another soul guided by kindly Miquella. I'm hardly the steady hand I once was. My fighting days are far behind me. Which is why I have chosen to dedicate myself to investigation, to discern tender Miquella's ultimate purpose. I'd rather not volunteer service to a new master unless I know that I can be of use.
Ansbach referring to us in this way indicates that he himself is not tarnished, as he does not identify with our ilk, despite him claiming to once be a follower of Moog. He shows no ill will to the player.
May I request a service of you? 6 crosses identical to this one have been discovered in these lands. They are akin to tender Miquella's footprints, or gravestones, which mark what he's left behind. If you discover any more crosses, be certain to tell me. I presume you, too, are keen to know just what kind Miquella is doing here.
Ansbach is tracking Miquella down, like the wolf he is, asking the sheepdog if he knows where the shepherd is.
Well, I'm much obliged. As suspected, kindly Miquella has visited the lands which hold the tower, and appears intent on wholly dispossessing himself of his flesh. He must be seeking entrance to the Tower of Shadow.
We have the Bellaret Tower Settlement Cross. This location is significant as it is near the dried bouquet, further tying the location with the sacrifice of spirit and a promise of revival. This cross also being one of the 3 that clues Ansbach into the machinations of Miquella is important, as we learn that
Righteous Tarnished, I have reasoned through my findings concerning kind Miquella's intentions, why he is here. The full picture is yet to coalesce, but we do know that he is bound for the Tower of Shadow, and that is where he intends to rise to true godhood. The Tower of Shadow houses a divine gateway. A well-kept secret it was, but the gateway was once the birthplace of a god we know all too well.
that during the boss fight, the arm of Miquella is mysteriously unable to be seen, fading ethereally into seemingly nothing, which many in the fanbase have suggested is the same that Ansbach famously wounded, as told to us by Leda after she suspects him of harboring intentions against the Empyrean once the charm breaks.
Ah, there you are. I'm afraid Sir Ansbach will have to be next. He insists that he's nothing but a worn-down, over-the-hill soldier. But in his day, he was the feared commander of the pure-blood knights, who cleaved open Miquella the Kine with his blood blade. He claims he hasn't the spirit to take up his sword again, but I doubt it'll be very long before he recalls, as I have, the cascading sheets of blood. I'm afraid he cannot be left to fester.
So, Ansbach is feared as the one who cleaved open Miquella the Kind? Not Miquella the Unalloyed, not Miquella of the Halig Tree, but Miquella the Kind. This implies a story of how the pureblood knights would follow Miquella into the Shadowlands, and where Ansbach would land a blow, only to have the scent of Miquella's blood beguile him to satiate that bloodlust with peace, a doping of the wolf within, using wolf as a metaphorical stand-in for a serial killer. For indeed, Ansbach was a serial killer chased into the sewers of Leyndell, where he met Moog, the one who would become Lord of Blood. The Wolf of Ansbach was chased down a well by dogs. Recall, we entered the sewers through a well in Leyndell's Poor district, and we find an imposter Moog and his disciple Esgar, as well as Moog's shackle and the symbol for his dynasty. I think that Moog was freed down here by Ansbach. This would make him an honorable person, similar to how Patches' armor calls him chivalrous, but we'll return to that idea later. It's the gentleman persona that hides the murderer, the devil in disguise. It makes you lower your guard around him. One man's golden hand is another man's kingslayer. Neither real Moog nor Ansbach are still down here, but the signs of their escape can perhaps be seen through the hole in the wall into the catacombs, and Esgar maybe being a policeman who was sent in after Ansbach, only to wind up becoming enthralled by Moog in his pursuit. Or, like we mentioned, Esgar is a stand-in for Ansbach, as the great hood he wears could be a reference to the executioner's hood. It already serves as a pyramid head reference, so the serial killer angle is all there. Creates a pale gold shadow before the caster, luring foes of hewn build and attracting their aggression. It is said that those beguiled by the shadow see within it a hated foe. I think if there was any one person to slap assassin to, Ansbach fits it. And the spirit calling snail seems to be indicating the victims of the lure, calling the spirits of the guards of Landell. It could be that perhaps a jailbreak of some kind happened and what forces were assigned down there were overrun, but I doubt it. It could also be an indication of how Morgoth is being duped by the fake Moog, focusing on a phantom instead of the real thing. This spell functions like how Morgoth treats Moog, where the enemy will focus on the lure instead of us. Much like how Morgoth thinks Moog is still down in the sewers because that's the last place he saw him. Meanwhile, Moog is actually rebuilding a dynasty far, far away. There are echoes to Yura, in a way, who thinks he can somehow save Eleonora, not realizing that the person they knew is long gone. However, that is a story we will save for another time. It is said that those beguiled by the shadow see within it a hated foe. Speaking of shadows beguiling those who see hated enemies, we see a familiar face in Night Rain, who still believes he protects the land of gold from pillagers, despite there being no Erd tree to be seen. Shackles were used to bind the accursed people called the Omen, and these ones were made to keep a particular Omen under strictest confinement. But the magic has long faded, leaving only a dark stain in its wake. The protector of gold yet stands guard over the realm, even after being swallowed by night. When defeated, Morgoth grants the power to have our own power increase with each grace discovered, almost like we are reinforcing the memory of gold within us. Even as a tool for night, he cherishes the light. It is said that those beguiled by the shadow see within it a hated foe. Indeed, it would seem easy to pull the wool over the eyes of others. After you tell Ansbach about the crosses of note, he is able to deduce the true purpose of the tower hidden by shadow no longer being beguiled by a hated foe. However, it would be another beguiled by shadow who would stand in our path next, in the form of Mesmer the Impaler. Before we continue in our character analysis, I want to take a moment to enjoy some insight from none other than a good friend of the channel, Scum Mage Infa, who writes the following. Ansbach, Seduction, and Betrayal. In the base game, the first two people we meet are a warrior maiden with close ties to Miquella, and a child revenger used as a weapon by their parent, seeking to erase the progeny and people of America. And we see the exact same thing in the DLC, with Freya, a female warrior with close ties to Miquella, and a child revenger used by their parent, seeking to erase the progeny and people of America. Melina rides Miquella's steed, Torrent, and Freya is guided by Miquella's kiss, with close ties to his consort. Then we have the Hornsent, child of the Hornsent Grandam, and her weapon of revenge, much like the grafted royal scion, the progeny of Godric, tools of his revenge, and living weapons embodying his grudge. And in the same vein, the third person we meet is the masked, soft-spoken representative of the Prince of Blood in both the lands between and the lands of shadow. These characters are not exact copies of one another, but complement and contrast one another in important and meaningful ways, reinforcing one another's character arc. Melina is present in the physical realm, but only as a spirit, while Freya appears purely physical, represented even by her armor while in the shadow realm. And they are both trying to find the meaning of a mission they have already set upon, and ultimately make their own decision when finding out the details, choosing to fulfill their original cause. Meanwhile, the Avengers, Hornsent and the Scion, are bound to the grudge they carry, and this is represented in the foul presentation of the form of the grafted Scions, and the repulsive mask and soiled attire of the Hornsent, despite apparently being of a relatively noble lineage given his mother's position. This mother, whose vengeful spirits are a spiritual manifestation of a grafted Scion. And similarly, Vare greets us with a soft-spoken, confident, and kindly voice, offering, albeit somewhat sarcastic, sympathy.
Oh, yes. Tarnished, are we? Come to the lands between for the Elden Ring, Of course you have. No shame in it. Unfortunately for you, however, you are maidenless. Without guidance, without the strength of runes, and without an invitation to the Round Table Hold, you are fated, it seems, to die in obscurity. Luckily for you, however, there is one shining ray of hope for even the maidenless. Me, Vare. Take care to listen. Are you familiar with grace, the golden light that gives life to you tarnished? You may also behold its golden rays, pointing in a particular direction at times. That is the guidance of grace, a path that a tarnished must travel. Indeed. Grace's guidance holds the answers. It will lead you tarnished to the path you are meant to follow, even if it leads you to your grave.
And guidance in a world where we were robbed of ours, with a mask presenting a smiling face, only for it to be revealed that the reason we are maidenless may very well be the practices of his maiden murdering club. The light by him represents a false grace and an artificial guidance purposefully constructed and wielded. And the same goes for Ansbach, the third character we meet in the DLC, who greets us with a sympathetic tone in our shared mission, and who dons a mask that is intended to give the impression of a quiet, wise old man. And yet, what we find when we battle him, or battle with him, is exactly as Leda described, the equivalent of Meister Pycelle when he is out of view and in the presence of a female servant, not limping about like he would have us believe, but wielding a blade and bow so universally feared and known, Freya herself notes on the honor of facing such a legendary weapon that had slain so many.
Lady Leda and Honourable Ansbach are of a special breed. How glorious it would have been had we met in battle as sworn enemies. Give my regards to Honourable Ansbach. Tell him, if we should meet in battle, To face your bow would be fine enough, but to face your blade would be an honor.
A betrayal of the presentation is a defeated and retired old man past his days of fighting, just like Vare's betrayal of his presentation as a guide, after likely being the reason ours was killed. Ansbach is the false guide, the lamplight. By Vare's side, he wields the very weapon that defeated him, charm. Charming the tarnished artfully into accompanying him in betraying the entire world and everyone else in the fellowship who, even after the charm broke, understood the sacrifice of Miquella and acknowledged the promise he kept by continuing to serve him, with the exception, of course, to Toye, who acts with the orders of Miquella's twisted other half, love born of dark notions like Ansbach as we know him. Just as Miquella charms with his promises and words, Ansbach charms the tarnished with this cold and dark world, with warm words and praise, with assurance that they are honorable and righteous, all while leading them down the path to hell, paved with honorable and righteous intentions. He is a hypocrite, masterfully using the very weapon that defeated him, hiding behind his mask, projecting innocence, while being the most fearsome of the fellowship. Just like Miquella hid behind his form of an innocent and weak child, while being the most fearsome Empyrean of them all. Just like Saint Trina, Ansbach pursues justice and salvation through twisted love born of dark notions. The same way that Vare would have us continue the cycle that led to our unfortunate, maidenless situation, becoming the very cause of our own loneliness and misery, and passing that on to the next tarnished. Ansbach would have us continue the cycle of misery that led to his own lord being defeated and used in this eternal struggle, guiding us to becoming the very cause of the stagnation of a shattered world, and the very reason the lands between is denied Eden. He would sacrifice 1,000 years of compassion just to sate his own thirst for an honorable end. He's an old man who, as he said, just wants to play his part, to be important. He prizes his own legacy over what he acknowledges as the selfless act of Miquella, and the only hope the lands between has at a true chance at Eden. He is, by distinction, the most selfish, self-righteous, evil character in Elden Ring. Indeed, many are beguiled by a pretty face or charming personality. Thank you, Infa, for providing your perspective. I encourage all of you in the audience to give his work a view, as he is a great scholar and hard-working friend. And for those of you from his channel, welcome. Hello again. It's me, your boy. Remember to chime the bell so you might be summoned when I make my next video. Now let us move on with our story. In Elden Ring, we find many stories that are told not just through one character, but often 3. The story of the criminal who escaped into the sewers is one of those stories. Morgoth's escape from the sewer is an interesting mystery, as there is never really an answer truly given, much like Mohg. People suspect Patches might have something to do with it, since he sells Margit's shackle, but they like to tie it to stuff to do with recusants, typically, and I don't know if that's a proper read. As I mentioned earlier, if Ansbach is a knight for saving Mohg, then perhaps Patches got his perspective of being chivalrous because he helped free Morgoth. He doesn't like clerics in the older games, seeing them as charlatans, so it would make sense that he would not help the fanatic Moog, which in turn plays into why there's a fake Moog in the sewers, because Moog wants to trick Morgoth into thinking he's still down there. Patches needn't have done it for any recusant reasons, and maybe, like Ansbach, used the sewers as an escape route from being pursued from the guards. Probably for just, well, being Patches, if we were to guess. It's hard when you have a potential parallel story and you aren't sure how much of the one story you are meant to read into the other, or how much one might play into the other, where one begins and the other ends. It could be that the two tales are very similar, or it could be that they are very different. And if you don't like that Patches freed Morgoth, well, you might prefer one of my other ideas, that Godric freed him, thinking he would support his claim to Leindel's throne, only for Morgoth to be the one to kick him out after his failed siege of Mount Gelmir. And Patches has the shackle because he nicked it from Godric's treasure hoard. It's convoluted, and regardless of how he made it out, I think it very likely that someone helped him, and it would seem likely that it's someone who would be lacking in honor without this action, and that they would probably use it as a bit of a crutch when explaining to another their character. The third character, however, I believe is Dung Eater. As mentioned earlier, I believe Dung Eater to be a parallel to Ansbach, though this parallel would be a bit inverse, as Dung Eater is more a sheep who dresses as a wolf in the Round Table hold, amongst the sheep following Grace, the divine shepherd. He makes well aware to all that he holds no love for his fellow man, believing himself to be the self-imposed revenger of his own injustice, and seeks to bring the world to a similar level as he. He was a murderer, a defiler, and committed atrocities in his own name, blaspheming against America. He would be chased into the sewers like Ansbach and Patches, and instead of saving anyone, he himself would be trapped, like the omen he so desperately desired to be like. The pattern of the Secret Third seems to be that they follow a similar path as the duality, but never arrive at actuation, leaving them outside the process. In this way, when we come to Dung Eater, he can only come to the conclusion that we are him, and that this is fate telling him he will become something greater. He becomes the prisoner willingly so that we, as him, may free him through the Mending Rune process. One could perhaps argue that in that way, we are the Secret Third, and the omen we are freeing is Dung Eater, and I think that that's a very interesting thought to play with. How close is a sheepdog to a wolf? In this way, some combination of the stories of Dung Eater, Ansbach, and Patches might give us a story of a thief or murderer slipping away from their capture by escaping into the sewers, and upon doing so, freeing someone else, and using the experience to change, make something more of themselves.
forefathers, one and all! Bear witness!
After the Great Rune breaks, Ansbach, much like the other followers of Miquella, finds his mind and the memories of how he challenged Miquella in the past and the inherent fear he has of the Empyrean return to him.
Kindly Miquella has discarded his great rune. The fog that vexed my aging faculties has been lifted, and follies better left forgotten haunt me once again. Once, in an attempt to free Lord Moog from his enchantment, I challenged tender Miquella, only to have my own heart rather artfully stolen. I knew not how weak I was. I believed that with sufficient mastery, even an Empyrean would be within reach of my blade. I could not have been more mistaken. Miquella the Kind is a monster, pure and radiant. He wields love to shrive clean the hearts of men. There is nothing more terrifying. Righteous tarnished, Miquella the Kind makes my blood run cold. I am loath to admit it, but even at this very instant I wish to run very far away indeed.
Yet he still cannot let his quarry slip away. He has his pride to regain, and his burning desire for revenge sends him to the Shadow Keep, where he attempts to discover clues of his own. However, he is no true scholar, and requires us to help once again.
Righteous Tarnished, after unburdening my soul to you, I had hoped to make a fresh start, but there was one thought I could not dislodge from my mind. So, here I am, quite unable to move on. After Lord Moog's slaying at his dynastic palace, it appears his body has been absconded with, and taken straight to kind Miquella. Surely you recall that I once served Lord Moog as a pureblood knight, after failing him in every regard, and losing sight of my vows. I'd do anything to make amends, in whatever meager way I can. What could they possibly have in mind for Lord Moog's remains? The implications are rather unnerving.
It is round this time Leda suspects Ansbach for the murderous psychopath that he is.
There you are. I'm afraid Sir Ansbach will have to be next. He claims he hasn't the spirit to take up his sword again, but I doubt it'll be very long before he recalls, as I have, the cascading sheets of blood. I'm afraid he cannot be left to fester.
They say real recognizes real. I suppose this is an instance of such a circumstance.
So, you would cull an old man such as I? You are thorough indeed, Lady Leda. I would expect nothing less. As you surmise, I do have my doubts, and will not simply lay down and die with them.
Similarly, Freya is searching for answers to her Lord Radon and the promise he made with Miquella.
Oh, hello. I'm afraid I'm busy. Curse upon my lack of foresight. I should have asked Ansbach to impart his knowledge when I had the chance.
Freya, by the gods. She must be feeling the need to reaffirm her allegiance before she heads to war. A true Redmane she is, hardly troubled by the rot. But no one is without their shortcomings. She has a hard road ahead. It does make one think. Perhaps our concerns are but two sides of the same coin. Well, what's this? Yes, I should have known. Even the truth was itself mere folly. As if using Lord Moog to gain entrance to the Land of Shadow were not enough, he plans to use his corpse as the vessel of his king consort. He has forsaken Lord Moog's soul. He desires only his empty shell. It beggars belief, but I'm afraid Tender Miquella fails to grasp the humiliation implied by this act. One thing is certain. My dear lord deserved better. Righteous Tarnished, you have my gratitude. You have given me the answers I needed, but I can hardly fathom it. Such folly. Unto the end. I am a warrior, but I've aged. I cannot afford to act hastily. Curse it all. I know my limits. I could spend the rest of my life honing my craft, and still that creature would be out of my blade's reach. The absolute folly of it all. Righteous Tarnished, could you please give this to Freya? Thanks to you, she too will have the answer she requires. Freya possesses a youth I no longer have. This knowledge will surely stoke the flames of valor within her. Yes, I can see her barreling into the fray right now.
I'm afraid I'm busy. Truly. I should have asked Ansbach to impart his knowledge when I had the chance. From Sir Ansbach? To me? What on earth could it... Yes. Of course. I see. As the Festival of War concluded, General Radahn's soul met an honorable end, but kindly Miquella wishes to revive it, which is fine by me. I know it would pain old Jeren, but war has always suited General Radahn best, and certainly far more than any honorable death. Endless war to invigorate the soul, as befits General Radahn, the great lion. Thank you. Now I finally cast off my misgivings. Give my regards to Honorable Ansbach. Tell him, if we should meet in battle, to face your bow would be fine enough, but to face your blade would be an honor.
I should have expected as much from Freya. Some things simply never occur to her. Paralyzing fear. True despair. That's Freya through and through.
Whatever is written on this small birchbark scroll, it holds the answers that both Ansbach and Freya seek, as they come to their decisions about their ends when finding out the contents. Unfortunately, Freya does not join us in releasing her lord from his duty, believing his role as the next lord is truly the greatest place for him. Ansbach, however, would take this opportunity to convince the sheepdog that eventually the flock would turn on it too. And he would be right, for halting our path to Miquella, Leda would challenge us to a fight where ideals would clash in a crucible of conflict, in an ancient antechamber of purification, once the home of holy fire, but now only filled with the divine ash of enlightenment, as our blood and footprints make wordless script across its surface, not unlike the speech of the fingers.
I am Ansbach, of the Pureblood Knights. I stand with blade aloft, blood afire, for the dignity of my lord and master, Moog. Well, good Freya, it will be my honor to test my blade against a Redmane.
Thank you, Sir Ansbach. The mere sight of your blade sets my heart aflutter. All the more I yearn to crush it in my grasp.
Righteous Tarnished, it appears that our interests have aligned. A balm upon my soul it is that we do not meet today as enemies. Now, my blade. Watch closely. Ha ha! How readily the sensation returns. The runaway spirit of war.
Like a hunter in Yharnam, he finds himself lost to the bloodlust, becoming a wolf in a man's body. He is so fervently giddy with the idea of catching his quarry, he doesn't care to spend time thinking about aught else. Like a wolf in the chase, he howls with excitement, regardless of the quarrels they had, for in the hunt, they share in their goal.
Good hunter, you've done well. The night is near its end. Now, I will show you mercy. You will die, forget the dream, and awake under the morning sun. You will be freed from this terrible hunter's dream. Dear, oh dear, what was it? The hunt, the blood, or the horrible dream? Oh, it doesn't matter. It always comes down to the hunter's helper to clean up after these sorts of messes. Tonight, Gammon joins the hunt. Righteous tarnished. That was an astounding battle, to be sure. Now I suppose this leaves only one. But in truth, I cannot calm my quivering. Challenging a god is no small matter. Oh. Something you want to get off your chest? Well, you needn't worry. It was you, wasn't it? Who defeated Lord Moog. Fear not. I bear no grudge against you. His Eminence was felled in an honorable duel. And such are the risks of seeking lordship. Besides, what right have I to complain? I blame the enchantment more than anything. Righteous tarnished, we will have our victory. I swear upon my blood.
Even in his dying breath, he goads us to complete his greatest work, the magnum opus of the Wolf of Ansbach. Kill the child of God, that men might suffer alone. Take this reward, because you have devoured the sons of men, like a fierce and ferocious beast. A real child eater.
Righteous tarnished. Become our new lord. A lord not for gods, but for men.
I want to thank you all for watching this video, as it took a lot of work and caused me crazy amounts of stress trying to get it out for Halloween, which I'm sure, as you noticed, I failed. I beseech you, my dear Tarnished, to subscribe if you made it to this point, and I want to thank you for your support. Thank you again to Jack and Infa for taking time out of your own busy lives to write up something about Ansbach. Be sure to check them out if you haven't already, but I imagine most of you have already heard of them. Also, thank you Bizarro Bazaar for the article about the werewolf of Ansbach, which is how I learned about this story. I've linked the post in the description. Thank you all again, and stay frosty, lovelies.
Are you cold? Oh, good hunter.